Welcome, fellow book enthusiasts, to the AGR Book Club podcast, where the world of literature, sips, and taste intertwine. I'm your host, Dr. Felicia J. Lindsay. I am thrilled to embark on this literary journey with you. If you're passionate about books, food, and drinks like I am, then you're in the right place. So whether you're here to discover a new read, tantalize your taste buds, or simply unwind with a good book and a cup of coffee, I encourage you to share your thoughts, like our content, leave your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Let's build a community where our love for literature, cuisine, and conversation collide. Subscribe now and let's embark on this journey together. Today we are here with awesome author Ryan Graudin. Had to say that name with expression because I had to make sure I said it right. She has a catalog of a lot of books, but she does have a book coming out in August. The book is Enchanted Lives. I've been reading up on some of it and I love the book. I went to your website and you had so much information. Your website is awesome for educators. It's awesome for avid readers. You tell where to get your books and you give a lot of information about yourself. Can you give our audience a little bit of brief history about you?
Of course. So as she said, my name is Ryan Graudin, and I was born and raised in Charleston, South Carolina. And I've spent pretty much my entire life here, except for 1 year living abroad in South Korea, teaching English. And even when I was a little girl, I loved reading. My mom was always so good about taking us to the library every week and, picking out books. And, of course, we always had our favorite books, but she was always kind of helping us push the envelope of what we were reading. So she would kind of force us out of our comfort zones. And then I found new favorites. And as I became a teenager, I became much more interested in creating stories of my own. So I remember I was probably 12 or 13 years old, and I read Ella Enchanted by Gail Carson Levine. Yeah, I know, you just gasped. It's one of my all-time favorite middle grades, but at the time I read it and I got to the end and I was like, wait, there has to be more to the story. I want more. And then I was, frantically looking up the authors. I went to her website and she did not have a sequel. There wasn't at the time. I know she's written some companion books since then. But I decided that I was going to write my own thinly veiled fan fiction sequel to Ella Enchanted. So that's kind of how I got started on writing my own stories. And then, the fan fiction quickly evolved into telling more original stories. And I was fortunate enough to go to an art school when I was in high school, and I majored in creative writing there. And then I went to College of Charleston and decided why not major in creative writing there as well. And I was just really fortunate enough when I graduated. That's the year I spent in South Korea. And I was waking up before going to school to teach every morning and writing for about an hour and a half every day before I got too tired out by school. And that was the book that I wrote that finally landed me an agent and got me a publisher. And so I have been in the publishing industry for about 13 years since then. And as you've said, I have written quite a few books ranging from middle grade titles all the way to The Enchanted Lives of Celeste Artois is coming out on August 27th, and that will be my adult debut. And then I have quite a number of young adult novels as well.
Now, I know you were saying that you love writing, and you gave us a little bit of an idea of the book that really got you into writing. Who's your favorite author now?
Oh man, I have quite a few favorite authors, and some of them are friends actually, which is great. But one of my absolute favorite writers is Laini Taylor, who is the writer of the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy, and she also has written The Strange, the Dreamer duology. She just writes very lush, gorgeous fantasy that her brain just works a little bit differently than everybody else's, and it's just such a beautiful thing to behold. And I just love reading her stuff. I also really love Alex E. Harrow, who wrote The 10,000 Doors of January and The Once and Future Witches, and most recently came out with Starling House, which was a Reese's Club book pick. And she just writes really gorgeous fantasy that's it's a little bit outside of the normal fantasy you might pick up, and just makes you want to like check the back of your wardrobe to see if there is actually like a door to another universe there. So yes, I love Lainey, I love Alex, and Maggie Stiefvater is another author. She writes mostly young adult, but I love her book, The Scorpio Races. It's about like horses who eat people on this island near the UK, and then the people who live on the island race them every year, which sounds really weird, but the way she writes it, it was a Prince Honor book, I think. So it's very well done, very high literary, but just like, yeah. So anyone who writes fantasy with a lyrical, lush voice is one of my favorite authors.
Now, I know you said that you taught for that year, and I know that you mix history with a lot of your books. I mean, I have a 9-year-old, and just trying to get him to read is always a task. But now your books, they sound very interesting. I was having him go through and look up some of the books. So how did you get from there and writing YA books?
Yeah, so I love history. I actually usually stories like that, they're like, I had this one inspirational teacher who, got me into it. I actually had a really horrific history teacher in high school, and she taught honors U.S. history. And at the very beginning of the school year, the very first class, we sat down and she said, well, I hate war. I think it is icky. She said the word icky. And she said, so we're going to skip all of the wars in this class. And we were like, but this is U.S. history. That's all we did. Like, so we didn't study like the Revolutionary War, nothing about the Civil War, nothing about World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, none of it. So she like focused on the flappers for like almost all of the year. And so
Really?
And we actually had like an extra credit where we had to pretend to be flappers at a speakeasy. And which was fun, but also not the whole year is a little excessive. But yeah, so in a response to that, my dad was always the type of person who bought a bunch of history books and read them and loved them. So his shelves were always full of, especially World War II books. And so in a response to that, I just decided to do my own reading and kind of fell in love with history that way. And so, yeah, I have, in my career as an author, have loved integrating history into my stories in very unique ways. One of my most popular books is called The Wolf by Wolf duology, and it is technically an alternate history. So this sprung out of my love of reading about World War II and wanting to find a way to approach that era in history that was kind of fresh or hadn't been done before. So I decided to set the story in a universe where the Axis powers had won, and the story is set in 1956, and it features, in order to celebrate their victory every year, the Nazis hold a cross-continental motorcycle race from Berlin, Germania is the name in the series because they renamed Berlin, from Germania all the way to Tokyo via the Road of Bones in Siberia. And the victor of the race gets, lots of fame and fortune, but also the chance to have an audience with the very reclusive Adolf Hitler. And the main character in the series, she had undergone a bunch of experimentation in the camps that caused her to develop a condition where she can literally change her appearance at will. And so she can make her face look like anyone else. And she decides to use the skill to enter the race posing as a former contestant. And her mission is to win the race and assassinate Hitler. So that's just one of the ways that I use history in the stories. And then I have another middle grade series co-written with my friend Amy Kaufman, where it's like a portal fantasy where we have, it features two cousins who stumble upon a world where everything that's lost in our world ends up there. So like keys and dogs and socks and Amelia Earhart and dinosaurs and all sorts of other extinct animals are all jumbled into this world, and the cousins have to kind of sort their way through and go home, but they meet all sorts of really amazing figures through history and learn about some of the things that were lost from our world along the way. I love, one of the reasons I love history and writing about it is because it's often so much weirder than like fiction. And so it makes for really engaging fiction when you discover like these random facts. Like in my upcoming adult novel, it's actually set in 1913. So it starts the year before World War I broke out, and the era in Paris, which is known as the Belle Époque, so the beautiful age. And in early 1914, so this was a fact I learned while researching it, because I did a lot of reading on World War I and the era, like the year before. And one of the things I learned was that, so fantasy colored hair, like pink hair, purple, teal, that was all the rage, because in 1914, there was a Parisian duchess named Duchess de Uzes who threw a party, and one of the party favors was colored wigs, so like super brightly colored wigs that were like orange and pink and green, and they were actually photographed in color at the time, which was like extremely rare, for a magazine called La Illustration. And it was published, and everyone loved the pictures and the idea of it so much that like colored wigs became super popular in London and New York and Sydney. And it was very in vogue to be wearing this pink hairpiece for like about a year. And so I just loved, it's such a random fact, and I just loved it so much that I was like, I'm going to find a way to integrate this into the story. And so there's a scene in The Enchanted Lives of Celeste Artois where there's this like almost magical sort of ball where all of the guests are receiving these colored hair pieces, and it becomes like part of a larger magic that's like overtaking the world in a sense. So yeah, I just love finding weird bits of history and extrapolating it and figuring it out how to weave it into a story. It's like kind of a source of magic for me.
Well, I like it. And then I was reading, and it said that their hideout is in a cemetery.
Yes, yeah. That was, so history is one of my huge...
Hello?
Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
That was...
Sorry. You got it. Can you hear me now? Okay. Yes. So history is one of my really big. Great. So history is one of my really big inspirations. But alongside of that, I was, especially in my 20s, I was really fortunate enough to be able to do a lot of traveling. And so that has also become a really big inspiration in my writing. And one of the places I love, one of my favorite cities in the world is Paris. And I went about 7 years ago. I was able to just be in the city by myself it happened that I was in between going places with friends, and they had gone somewhere else, and I was staying alone. And I was working in a little Airbnb in Paris, and I kind of had it ended up being really right next to a cemetery known as Père Lachaise. Sorry, my French accent is terrible. But so I decided I was going to take the day and just explore that, because I'd been to Paris a few times before, so I'd seen all of the really big tourist attractions like Notre Dame and the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre. But I was just decided to take the day and explore the cemetery. And it is a really amazing place. Like all the monuments are like, the mausoleums are like small houses. They have these beautiful stained glass windows and like doors. And there's just such a rich history, and there's cats like running everywhere. And it seems like the perfect place to set a story. And so that visit kind of sat in the back of my mind. And then as I was starting to construct The Enchanted Lives of Celeste Artois, I was thinking about, it features 3 women, Celeste, Honoré, and Sylvie, who all met under different circumstances, but have decided to form like they have their own gang basically, and they perform like confidence schemes. And the main character, Celeste Artois, she's a forger, and she forges masterpieces for them to then fleece. They use to sell to rich young men who are pretty greedy and want to turn it around and sell it for more because they believe it's a genuine article. But yeah, these girls, I was like, okay, well, where can they live and operate? And I decided to have them camp out in the cemetery. So yeah, they live in the cemetery and they paint in a grave, and yeah.
I like it. Now, with the book coming out in August, are you going to have more ARC readers for it? Is it an opportunity that more people get to read the book?
Yeah, so currently actually the physical ARCs are they were shipped like 2 days ago. So we're still waiting on them to arrive and be there. But we have reached out to several influencers and to see, we want, obviously, when you're releasing a book, you want people to read it. And in order for people to read it, you need word of mouth to start spreading. You need people to know about it. So we have been reaching out to book talkers and YouTubers and reviewers on Goodreads. And I'm at that stage where, and I've experienced this with every single book. So this Enchanted Lives of Celeste Artois is my 10th novel. So I feel like there's a moment, because with books, you spend months, if not years, working on them. I've spent 7 years writing The Enchanted Lives of Celeste Artois. And so there's that moment where, it's yours for such a long time. And then the moment where it kind of tips out into the world, and then the story starts to belong to everyone else. And it's always like feeling like you're at the top of a roller coaster, kind of waiting for the moment where the drop happens. So yeah, I'm really excited for people to start reading this book and to experience all of the magic and all of the themes that I have explored in this novel. It's my most ambitious project yet, which is saying something, considering I've written an alternate history duology and also like a science fiction book about time traveling thieves, which were both very challenging. But this book like took me to a whole other level as a writer. And I'm really proud of what I ended up, the story I ended up telling. And I'm just really hopeful that readers will resonate with that.
Now, did you make up any mock-ups of the characters, of the main characters?
Yeah, so
like drawings. You had someone.
Yeah, so I have actually, yes, I have commissioned some character art because as an author, you love seeing. I mean, I love seeing fan art all over the interweb, and I love, especially, writers like Jay Kristoff, who have such a huge fan base, who are like constantly producing just these really gorgeous, like high-end, or like V. Schwab, she has these amazing fan art like communities who like bring her stories to life. So yeah, I have commissioned some fan art from a artist named Danny, and it's not done yet, but she has sent me sketches, and oh my gosh, I've definitely let out some expletives while I was when I opened it up, because it's so good. So yes, that will actually be, I'm planning for that to be a pre-order perk. So if you pre-order the Enchanted Lives of Celeste Artois from my local bookstore, Itinerant Literate, I'm planning on anyone who pre-orders a copy from there will be getting a print of the character fan art that I'm going to commission, or I have commissioned. Yeah.
Now, the other thing I want to know, I love those books that have I'll put it together and read it. Are you going to have any special editions like that?
Oh man, I would love that. Obviously, like that's one of my dreams, but that's not something that I can control, unfortunately. And I don't know yet. So we're still in the stages of, sending the book out for consideration for some of the bigger book boxes and that sort of thing. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed, because I think it's definitely a story that has a lot of potential in terms of special editions and like accompanying like the sprayed pages and fan art and all of those things. It's a very rich story and lends itself to that sort of thing. But I hope so.
Now, you said it took 7 years to write, and I know you said earlier in your career you would write before you went to work at school. Do you have a particular process now as far as writing? Do you write most of the day?
Yeah. So I became a full-time writer probably about 10 years ago. And I thought at the time when I switched from, working in between work and then switched to full-time, I thought, okay, well, yeah, I should be able to write 8 hours a day, et cetera, et cetera. But the way my brain works, and I feel like the way most creative brains work, is that you can only be in that deep focus creating worlds mode for like 3 or 4 hours max, and then your brain stops working. You've used up all of your concentration and focus, because the work takes so much mental energy. So I learned, and I actually read a book by Dr. Cal Newport called Deep Work, and it basically explains the science behind that, and it made me feel a lot better about myself. It basically just gave me permission to be like, okay, I've done what I can with my brain today, and now, but I also I am now the mother of 2 young girls, and so that also takes up a lot of my time. So I have to.
That's a full.
It's a lot, and it takes up a lot of mental energy as well. So I'm back to writing in the mornings, and then and then the rest of my day is devoted to being a mom and all of the fun stuff that comes with that. Yeah.
That is awesome. Now, I just want to end up a little bit more with your website, which I've already told you that I love. And one thing that I really liked about it was the facts section. So the questions that are most commonly asked, because I had so many people always asking, how do you get published? How do you self-publish? And that's why I started the group and just talking with other authors. But you put everything on the website, the most common questions. I love that. What gave you the inspiration to do that? And do you feel, or have you met people in the community that have went to your website, saw that information, and it's helped them out?
Yeah, so I think, especially with authors, and I don't know how true this is anymore as it has been in the past, but I think like the career of becoming an author and writing has always been like shrouded in a veil of mystery, or authors were previously, before social media, authors were like very reclusive, mysterious figures, and no one really knew what they looked like or what they did, except that, they're on the back of the book. And so, but yeah, I think there's, it's one of those jobs that a lot of people dream of having, or it's like becoming a singer or an actress, or something like that. And so there's still a lot that people don't know, and I think they see someone who's made it, or someone who is published, and so I would get a lot of like, oh, how do I, like, I have an idea, like, how do I turn it into a book, or I have this book that I've been working on, how do I get it published? And so it's easy for me now to be like, oh yeah, just go here to my FAQs, because I've written all about it, and hopefully that information will help you, instead of writing a new email every single time, or or that. So I think, especially in this day and age, like, people appreciate transparency, and they appreciate accessibility of information, and so that's one of the reasons I did it. And yeah, I do hope it helps people out. I remember how hard it was when I was trying to break into the industry, like just getting that information and like trying to figure out my way through, like, what is a query letter? What are literary agents? Like, what are the odds of this happening? It felt like a really lonely process. And so I'm hoping to make it a little less lonely for people.
Well, that was awesome. I'm going to tell people to come to your website so they'll see your books, but I'm going to tell them to go and learn about that information too, because it's just going to bring more traffic and more people seeing it.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to know is, what is your favorite restaurant where you are in Charleston?
Ooh, I have an automatic answer for that. And it does come back with a tiny bit of literary backstory as well. Think about it. So the author community in Charleston is it's small, but we have like a really wide variety of writers. It's not just young adults novelists. There's also, like beach reads and literary giants and that sort of thing. But I met, I was doing a launch party for one of my earlier novels. And as I was at the launch party, the bookstore owner, he said, oh, hey, this young lady over here, her name is Corey Wong, and she just signed with an agent, and she's about to go on submission. So I was, hoping that maybe you could talk to her and like help her navigate the process. And I was like, yes, I would love to have coffee with you. And so we went out to coffee and we started talking about that. And she was, during that time, she says, oh, my husband and I moved down here to start a food truck. But I also love writing and stuff like that. And their food truck, as soon as it turned out to be known as something called short grain, which was like the food just blew my mind. Her husband is like so insanely talented. And then as like Corey got to publish her books, The Takedown and City of the Beast. And then while she was doing that, they decided to open up a restaurant, and the restaurant's called Jackrabbit Philly, and it has been featured in Bon Appetit for quite a few things. And it is just like, it blows my mind. It's like this really amazing, like Chinese fusion. Her husband is from Beijing, and he has like brought a very like modern twist to like traditional Chinese food that is like at a very elevated dining experience. And it just happens to be like a 10-minute walk from my house. So it's my favorite place for sure. And I highly recommend, if you're ever in Charleston, go to Jackrabbit Philly. Yeah.
Well, that sounds like a good recommendation. I always ask different authors, because everybody's somewhere different. So the recommendations, I just love to go to the different places and just try the different recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on today. We enjoyed speaking with you, but I want you to tell me your website, your social media handles, so that we can know how to get your books and know how to get your new book in the future.
Yeah, sure. Yes, so my website is my name, so it's www.ryangraudin.com. And then as for social media, you'll mostly find me over on Instagram. I'm at my handle is rgraudin, I'm also on Twitter a little bit, but not so much anymore. But you can find me there at Ryan Graudin. And yeah.
Well, thank you again, and we look forward to your book coming out in August.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
As we come to the end of another insightful episode of the AGR Book Club podcast, I want to extend my heartfelt thank yous to each and every one of you for joining us today. Remember, your engagement fuels our passion for literature and community. So let's keep the dialogue alive. Share your thoughts, like our content, leave your comments, and subscribe to our channel for more enriching discussions. Until next time, let's keep the conversation alive and the pages turning. Share, like, comment, and subscribe. And let's make every moment count in our literary adventure together.